In this video net interview, I'm with Neil Berry, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Airbeem. Hello, Neil.
Hi there. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Now, we know streaming is a mainstream activity. What's really interesting in the last 2 years, we've seen SVOD stacking and what some analysts are calling self-bundling of OTT services. Do you think that heralds a new era of more a la carte content consumption?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a bit of a tidal wave of that happening. I mean, it's not just the super brands that are going direct to consumer for the first time. That's one thing that's fueling it. And that can be large or small content owners. But every time you've got Netflix or Amazon launching in a new country, then you've also got all of the more niche channels beginning to understand that if they're on linear, that they also need to be consumed on all those different devices. That is the Netflix experience within those countries. So they look to put a new direct-to-consumer strategy together to actually defend their audience and keep their audience. So I think, and also the consumer behavior is the driver, right, as well, because we now want to be consuming our own diet, and we'll get the content that we want, and perhaps not the typical approach of going to the aggregator like a Sky and saying, right, I'll look as to what's available on that library. I know the content I want, I know what diet I want, and so I'll go and choose the different SVOD services that make up my content diet, and I might not need a cable subscription anymore, so I've got extra money to spend on what those subscriptions might be. So I think actually it's being fueled by a lot of those different factors. Personally, I'm a content binger and scavenger, so I'll look for content wherever it is, and I've got 6 different subscriptions at home already. So I think we're absolutely moving towards a complete a la carte content diet, and each household will create their own content diet.
Okay, and obviously direct-to-consumer, where a channel owner has their own kind of defined service, quite low price, low commitment, that fits very well into that paradigm. How big do you think that can actually become as a marketplace?
Well, I mean, we're seeing all types of content owners going down this route. So I don't think you have to be a DAZN or an NBCU Studios. I think anyone that has super fans, particularly in sports, we're seeing all of the sports genres, even some of the smaller brands that may have super fan followers on social media or on YouTube, that they're actually now seeing that the barriers are broken down, that they can go direct to consumer, it's more affordable to them, they have more control over their audiences to reach there and have those relationships directly. So we see thousands and thousands of different content owners now going to direct to the consumer first time, and also thousands and thousands that may have perhaps had their content elsewhere, say on YouTube, for instance, where they're not really got control over that monetization, looking to say, well, how do I build that relationship with my audience directly with my brand, and not necessarily have my brand lost in multiple other brands. So, that's the market we're addressing. We think the tier 2, tier 3 market could be potentially huge.
Okay, and that's an important point, the people coming off of YouTube, or at least using direct-to-consumer with YouTube, it's not just big broadcast channels who are doing this, is it? It's also digital firsts who are going it on their own.
Yeah, there's many startup greenfield direct-to-consumer that's going out there, and their biggest challenge tends to be the dialogue that we have with them is what is the right business model to wrap around their content. And some of them haven't even gone out on YouTube before, but those that have are looking to say, well, will the consumers follow the content? No matter where the platform, are they loyal to the content or they're loyal to the platform? And I think what we're seeing is they're actually more loyal to the content. So if they were to establish their own direct-to-consumer and that complements YouTube, that the consumers will follow them, they then get more control over what they can do around their brand. So it then becomes a complementary strategy. Equally, we've got another category of direct-to-consumers that have never done anything before. They're a startup environment, they might want to take their content globally, they've got to build audience rapidly. And so again, the content, for those guys, the barriers have come down from a technology standpoint to make that more affordable, and they can launch pretty rapidly and become a very global OTT provider within months, gaining revenue from their audience.
Okay, so you don't need to be big to do this. I mean, we all know about the Disneys and BBCs and WWEs and people like that. So you're saying that this can be something that any kind of sized content owner could do?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at what the content proposition is. I mean, content is still king, right? You've got to have the right content proposition that draws the audience in. And so if you've got a compelling content proposition, even if you're a smaller sports brand or you're a smaller kids program, or whatever the genre is, then if that content proposition is really compelling, you then got to figure out what is the right monetization strategy around it. That's the dialogue that we tend to have with most content owners that have those rights. Is it enough content? Do I have a big enough reach to the audience to make a profitable business out of it? We spend a lot of time business modeling with those customers to understand what that model looks like. And then if that looks like a profitable model, then they can then look at what's the technology they need to enable them to launch that service. So I think you don't have to be a Disney to do this. You can actually be anyone that's got thousands of super fans that like your content, that will follow it wherever it goes, and you want to create an experience around it that's more immersive.
So in terms of the technology then, what have you done to lower the barriers so that smaller companies can go direct to consumer?
I mean, that's a good question. It's not just us, obviously. I mean, the whole technology has been changing in OTT for years and years and years. All the different parts of the video ecosystem have become more cloud-based, have become more affordable. What Airbeem have done is really leveraged some of those technology barriers coming down to create a complete end-to-end direct-to-consumer platform. And changed the business model around it, so made sure that it's not big capital expenditure up front, because traditionally in OTT sometimes it's 6 to 12 months to launch it. Then you've got maybe 5 to 6 different technologies that you need to go acquire, and then you've got to systems integrate it all together. Those days have changed, and those technologies are now cloud-based. They're simple and easy to configure and use, and simple and easy to deploy rapidly, so that time to value, that time to launch is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So with those barriers now, the smaller guys can now afford to do it. They can be multi-territory and be in multiple countries on multiple devices. So the device reach is also an important element of that, making sure that I don't have to build from the ground up a Samsung TV app or a mobile app or a Roku app. You can be on those apps almost now instantly, within months or within weeks, and that gives you a massive velocity to gain audience fast. So those barriers are really come down, and what Airbeem is really doing is making them faster and faster to deploy on more and more devices in more and more territories to drive that audience uptake.
Okay, so obviously economics and the ease of launching. What else? Where would you say you differentiate? Because obviously it's quite a crowded marketplace getting people OTT.
Yeah, so what we've come at the marketplace from a front-end experience perspective, we think that whilst content is king, creating the right user experience around your content is also what's going to keep your audience with you, to make it easy to search, easy to be personalized, easy to discover, and making sure we drive agility in the ability to, in real time, change that user experience. So we've productized the front end of the video experience, make it easy to drive it on the devices. Where we differentiate is we've thought about the different business models that you need in that as well, to create a frictionless purchase experience and pre-integrate that. So we've got the ability from a UI UX perspective to create an immersive experience around your content. We laid into that the monetization options that are out of the box, so that you don't have to do a lot of systems integration. You can blend those business models into the UI UX by a simple editorial configuration. You don't have to be a rocket science to do it. And then more importantly, that you then throw into that the analytics and surface up the insights, because you've got so much data in the ecosystem coming from different sources. The data of who's buying what, who's consuming what on what device, what's the quality of service. What we feel is really important that we're beginning to differentiate ourselves on is, how do you personalize the UI UX? How do you keep people from churning? You've got to still have the good content, but you've got to create the right experience. You've also then got to surface up to the direct-to-consumer provider the right insights that help them know what content is selling, what's not selling, and what's the experience around the consumer, that you can keep making them the right offers. And that tends to be AI-driven analytics, and those insights have to be actionable. And there is almost so much data, we find an interesting dialogue with our clients as to, well, what would you like on your desktop in a dashboard that tells you what's profitable about your business? What are the KPIs that you would like to see? And that is always probably one of the most interesting debates that we have. And so I think, looking at those three differentiators, it's the frictionless payment models and blending those together in the UI UX. It's the analytics, and then have an analytics engine that you can change in real time. That's really where I think we're different.
Okay, well I think direct to consumer is probably the mega trend to watch right now. So thanks for coming in and tell us how everyone can get involved in that. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you.